Divorced, beheaded, survived. Divorced, beheaded. No. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. I've been on a trip recently to Hever Castle here in Kent, and that was the family home of Anne Boleyn, who was the second wife of Henry VIII. So if you fancy coming along, not for a history lesson, but for a day out to see how the castle has been decorated for Christmas, you're in the right place. And if you love videos like this, days out in the English countryside, flower arranging and a little bit of charity shop shopping, why don't you consider subscribing to my channel? All you need to do is to hit the red button marked subscribe, and that means next time you open the YouTube app on your phone, your laptop or your computer, one of my videos will be waiting for you. Hever Castle is located on the Kent-Sussex borders. So here we are at the entrance to the castle. We're actually in the courtyard and you can see some of the Tudor renovations that have taken place. So we've walked over the moat, through the gatehouse under the portcullis and then into the main castle itself. And this is the drawing room, which was last updated when it was owned by the Astor family. So take a look at the marquetry on the walls, the inlaid wood, the beautiful ceilings. And this looks like such a comfortable sitting room. I can imagine myself sitting here sipping a Christmas drink in my evening dress, which I bought at the charity shop just before Christmas. And if you'd like to find out more about my charity shop adventures, I'll leave a link to my thrift haul playlist in the description underneath this video. You might recognise these pictures of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who was a frequent visitor to the castle. So this was a beautifully decorated room in very understated pastel colours, lilacs and pinks. I didn't keep count of the number of Christmas trees we spotted throughout the castle, so if you're keeping a running total, let me know in the comments how many you think there were. One thing I did notice was that every single tree was a fresh Christmas tree, and the flower arrangements themselves, well, they included fresh pine, but I think every single one of the flowers was artificial. Can you spot the mauve clematis, the peachy pink hydrangeas, and then some of the skeletonized leaves with a little bit of glitter on them? As we move from room to room, there are little interesting information panels explaining the history of the castle and its links to Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. Apart from the drawing rooms, most of the rooms were decorated in a very traditional style with reds and golds, and this is the Great Hall, so you can see the fresh Christmas pine with the golden artificial poinsettia. I think the deep red here is probably an amaryllis, peonies, and lots of glitter and fairy lights just subtly twinkling in the background. And look how well that colour combination picks up on the tapestry seat covers behind. Naturally, my eye was taken with the flower arrangements, but I have to keep reminding myself to look up and look around. And this beautiful golden Christmas tree in the corner of the Great Hall. Such beautiful hanging baubles, glittered pine cones, stars, and of course, because this was a royal castle, plenty of crowns too. And then as we look the other way, there's a minstrel's gallery set high up on the opposite wall, decorated with swags of pine and gold bows. Hever Castle has its own range of Christmas baubles in all sorts of colours. I've spotted this gold one here. This was a much smaller tree than the one in the Great Hall, one perhaps more that you'd think of being a sort of domestic scale that you could enjoy in your own living room. Lots of sparkly leaves and a mix of matte and glittery baubles, giving your eyes something to feast on. We booked our tickets for 2:30 in the afternoon, so we got to see the castle in daylight and then enjoyed the Christmas lights in the garden as dusk began to fall.
Using artificial and natural plant materials together is a really good way of getting a festive look without breaking the bank. Not quite sure what these leaves are supposed to be. Perhaps they're green leaves from the poinsettia before they've gone that bright red, and then with clusters of glittered acorns in the centre. You can see here that the Christmas pine is starting to go over a little bit, but they've probably been in place now for about a month. I was blown away by the drawing room as we first entered the castle, but then the Great Hall caught my eye too, and there's another room further on in the tour which took my breath away. Let me know in the comments which is your favourite room. And for me, this one with the reds and golds just sums up what I think a traditional Christmas looks like. So this room was remodelled by the Boleyn family. They added in a huge chimney off to one side and some extra windows. This is probably something you could try at home, putting evergreen foliage into an urn, just lifting everything off the tabletop and then adding some candles. Those ones were battery operated. Hever Castle was the family home of Anne Boleyn, who was the second of Henry VIII's 6 wives. There was an interesting display in this hall area that talked about the floods at the castle in 1958 and again in 1968. And this, you can see a tide mark up against the wainscoting, which was about 1 metre high.
Flower arranging.
As we move on to the next living area, a very traditional English country house way of decorating for Christmas. Little white lights and lots of red on the Christmas tree, and they'd even set out Christmas cards on the mantelpiece. This arrangement was set on the right hand side of the mantelpiece, so again you can see the natural Christmas pine and the full blooms of peonies with a sprinkling of fairy lights. Upstairs in this room, they've gone for red lights, which I didn't quite like as much as the natural white, but the tree here was decorated with all sorts of woodland creatures, presumably being influenced by the carving on the huge chimney breast. Wouldn't it be fabulous to have windowsills wide enough in your own home to be able to create a stunning arrangement like this? So we've got the reds of the peonies and hydrangeas, and then some seasonal pine cones and a little flicker of Christmas lights. And then to one side, to fill up the space, more pine cones and berries, and then a really delicate artificial garland strung across the window. You'll notice lots of the Christmas trees have got artificial lights in the form of candles, which are very pretty. And then check out the cellophane there. Can you see it on the windowsill? So a top tip for you, if you're arranging flowers in your home, or perhaps in a historic building or your local church, always to put a protective layer underneath your flower arrangements just to catch any water drips. We move on to a rather sombre room next. And off to the right hand side of the mantelpiece is a facsimile of a letter written by Anne Boleyn to Henry VIII the night before she was beheaded. It was very moving to read. There were lots of multicoloured lights on this tree, reminiscent of my childhood in the 70s and 80s. And from the gloom of Anne Boleyn sitting quietly in her room to the festivities in the gardens outside. So here we have King Henry VIII and very understated Christmas trees and the beautiful candlelight shining out in the gloom. And then off to the side, another festive flower arrangement. What flowers can you spot? I think there's a large chrysanthemum, roses and gold glittery berries. And then from the darkness of this room to the lovely gallery. So this gallery walkway was behind the Tudor facade I showed you at the front of the video. It was a very popular spot for family photographs, so I didn't really get much footage. Let's have a little peek out of the windows to see the Christmas trees at the entrance to the castle. And from the openness of this gallery walkway to the quiet darkness of the next room, there are 5 Christmas trees here. There's a mix here of candlelight and traditional Christmas lights with lots of red added too. I particularly like the round red balls reminiscent of the pomandas my friends and I made by studding cloves into oranges. A really great activity to do for the Christmas time, and I'll leave a link to a video showing how we made our pomanda balls in the description underneath this video. Fruit and flowers, they are always the perfect combination in your festive flower arrangements, and here the bright shiny artificial apples are a great way of making sure that ethanol, which is the gas which ripening fruit gives off, doesn't actually shorten the life of your fresh cut flowers. And as we move into the bedchamber of King Henry VIII, check out the beautiful carvings to the 4-poster and across the walls. And the tree here was decorated primarily in royal crowns with a red, white and blue detail. And then it's up the stairs again to the portrait gallery, and I think possibly my favourite room of all. I must admit I barely paid any attention to the actual portraits in this gallery, as I was mesmerised by the line of trees. You can see decorations being repeated throughout the castle. Again, lots of them with a woodland theme. I can see acorns and pine cones, little groupings of toadstools. Look, there's a blue Hever Castle bauble there, a hedgehog. Just so much to look at, as well as taking in everything as a whole.
Someone wants to shout Hever, okay? Okay, 1, 2, 3, Hever.
And the trees at either end of this gallery had a white theme. So we have the candlelight, a little snowy owl, snowflakes, and some white baubles, acorns which have been carved out of wood. And in the attic space there were a line of children's bedrooms, so these were refurbished for the Astor children. And then the final gallery right at the top of the castle is getting a little bit gloomy outside, so quite hard to photograph in these conditions. That might be the reason why they chose white to decorate here, as it's more luminous than the reds of the lower rooms. The trees here all had a musical theme. I love the ribbon here with the music running along it. See how many instruments you can spot. A French horn, trumpets, a violin, and the tree topper. The top of this tree is a little drum. And then across underneath the window, a beautiful display in whites made up of hydrangeas and roses. An opportunity to take another look at the beautiful leaded lights looking out over the courtyard. The last lot of Christmas trees were up in the armouries. I wasn't particularly interested in the tales of torture from yesteryear, so I concentrated on the Christmas trees. I particularly like this cranberry ring. And then it was back down the spiral staircase to enjoy the carnival atmosphere out in the grounds. So we hit it just right in terms of our timings, and were able to enjoy the castle and its grounds lit up for the festive period. So as I leave you to enjoy these Christmas lights, a little quiz about Henry VIII. Can you remember the names of his 6 wives? It was Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr. And who was the next in line to the throne after Henry VIII died? Jane Seymour's son was the next king, Edward VI, and he died at the age of 9. Catherine of Aragon's daughter then became Queen Mary I. And then finally, perhaps the most famous queen of all, Elizabeth I, daughter of Anne Boleyn. At this stage of the video, I should say that my camera battery ran out, so these photographs are courtesy of the friends that I visited with. Our next stop was the gift shop. Now, if you are a member of my YouTube group, you'll know, because you're paying a monthly fee for bonus footage and free access to my monthly flower arranging club, I've got some bonus footage for you showing our trip to the National Trust village of Chiddingstone. But first, back to those Christmas decorations. So that ring of cranberries, £5.50. You could always make your own ring though, if you've got fresh cranberries to hand. All you need to do is take a bendable florist wire and thread them through like a necklace and then fasten them together at the top. Well, that's all from me for now, and I wish you a happy new year.